A very, very good evening to one and all present. Thank you so very much for joining us for this special episode of View TV by Vijay Bhumi, where we bring to you another episode of the CLAT Masterclass series. Today, we are joined by Ms. Shivangi Mishra. Ms. Shivangi Mishra is a third year student of the National Law School, Bangalore. She wrote the CLAT exam in the year 2018, and she's going to be very happy to share all the tips and tricks up her sleeve as to how to crack this exam and how to end up in the National Law School Bangalore like her. Thank you so much, Shivangi, for taking out time and for joining us today and sharing all these tips and tricks with our audience today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kritika.
So today we're going to talk about how to crack the English section in the CLAT exam. As most of you would have just read, I mean, we've just received an update, which all of you must know because the coaching centers would have told you that the CLAT exam is now happening on the 22nd of August finally. So there is now a date to it. So all of that preparation that you guys were doing, which everybody felt very anxious about, there's no date to it, when's it going to happen, and all of that confusion has come to an end. But definitely with the new announcement also comes new challenges as to how this exam is going to be rolled out, keeping in mind social distancing norms. So I think that is something that we have to wait and see how that pans out. So in the meanwhile, let's talk about English. In our previous two episodes, I have seen numerous questions from people about how to crack the English section, how to deal with reading comprehension, etc. So I'm hoping that Shivangi will very effectively be able to give you all those, secret mantras today. Make sure you're asking us a lot of questions. I know all of you have already discovered the chat box feature, which is available on the right. Make sure you enter your questions. We will be taking audience question and answers towards the end. We have reserved about 15-20 minutes for that. So any of your questions regarding CLAT prep, feel free to shoot them there and we will take it during the audience Q&A round. So without further ado, let's get into this session, Shivangi. So first, Shivangi, what I'd like to understand from you, and I think this might be a doubt for many of the people who are joining us here today, that is there any difference between the pattern of the English section from 2019 to 2020? If yes, can you just list it down for us?
Yeah. So the CLAT 2019, or in fact, like all the other previous CLATs that we've had until now, usually had an English section which contained parajumbles, vocabulary, reading comprehension, and grammar questions, but they were all separately. What I see from the CLAT 20 paper and the sample papers that have been uploaded on the website is mainly that they have all been integrated into a form of a reading comprehension. So I think firstly, that this moves towards a platform where we're not only just testing knowledge, but we're also testing application and contextual understanding of the aspirants.
Yeah.
Secondly, I feel like the context of a reading comprehension gives everyone an edge to, even if you do not know the meaning of a word, but if you read the passage and you can comprehend that from the options that are given, I think that gives an added advantage to everyone who's practiced RCs well. So that's mainly the shift that we've had from the 2019 to the 2020 paper.
Yeah, I think that's very right. And I think one of my observations when I studied the difference in the patterns, what I realized was that now you see some amount of reasoning and generally also, you see that the papers become very content heavy in all sections.
Right.
So I think one of the two major things that when I saw it, I felt was one is you have to really amp up in terms of your reasoning because generally through the sections, be the legal reasoning section, the logical reasoning section, and to an extent, even in the English section, they are testing your critical reasoning skills.
Right.
Yeah. And the second thing that I observed was that, the papers become really content heavy. So definitely, I think one thing that really needs to be done is students really need to improve their speed. So do you have any tips and tricks on that, on how one can improve their reading speed?
Yeah. So I've always, and this is what I've always told people like who I've helped out with stuff, is that I think personally when I started out, I didn't have a great reading speed either. But the reading speed should never come at a cost of your accuracy. So One thing that you have to keep in mind is it's okay if initially when you're practicing, and given that right now also we have 2 months, which is, to be very honest, sufficient time to practice, given that there's absolutely nothing else to do at this point in time, apart from like what you're prepping for CLAT. So I think you need to first focus on accuracy. Only then the question of speed comes around. Having said that, once you've mastered the skill of accuracy, then when we begin to improve our speed, what we can do initially is what I used to do is that whatever RCs I was doing, not as part of the mock, of course, and as part of the mock, you have to time yourself in the entirety of the English section and the entirety of the paper. But when you're practicing RCs outside your mock, or you're reading something, like you're reading an article, I used to just put a timer on, and I used to target myself that I need to complete this passage in 7 minutes, and I need to complete it. So
Right.
yeah, so that is one thing that you need to do to improve your speed. And I think the only other, there's no foolproof trick to improving your speed at the cost of your accuracy. That is, it should never come at the cost of your accuracy. Otherwise, I think the more you read, the better it is. It just happens. It's something that you need to get a hang of.
Yeah. And I think what you said is absolutely right. Accuracy is key. And one thing that, when people come and ask me about, how to prepare for these exams, what I always tell them is make good use of the editorial sections of the newspaper, especially in newspapers like the Hindu or the Indian Express, which are super content heavy. Because, what happens is, you're meeting 2-3 purposes through that. Because this time in your legal reasoning section as well, they are going to test the fact that how well aware and how updated are you about what are the legal developments that are happening in the country. So definitely helps you in that. It helps you in improving your GK. And third and most importantly, it helps you in improving your vocabulary, and it also helps you in improving your reading speed. So I think it's a great idea. Like, I think one thing, what you said about timing yourself, that's super important. I think it's constantly important for you to work on your words per minute.
Yeah.
And that gives you a good sense of like how are you doing, and you have to constantly keep challenging yourself in terms of the boundaries that you're setting for yourself. So this brings me to the
I just wanted to add on to that. So when I was going through the sample papers for this year, I noticed that they started providing the place from where they've picked up that particular article at the end. So I felt like, and most of those places were, New York Times, newspapers like The Guardian, The Atlantic. So I feel like, even just spending 10 minutes of your day reading 2 articles on any of these important websites helps you in increasing your speed.
Yeah, that's actually a very good hack, actually, because you're right. I mean, see, obviously the sources that they've revealed gives you a good idea from where they're going to be picking up the passages.
Yeah.
So I think it's definitely a good idea. You may not read the same thing, but it gives you an idea of the style of writing and the vocabulary level. So I think that definitely gives you an edge in the paper. I think that's a very valuable tip. So now that we have a date to the CLAT, which we know now is going to be 2 months away. So what do you think should be the preparation like of a student at this junction for the English section? Like, how would you have done it?
Right. So I understand, like, and I've been getting a lot of messages saying that, we're just exhausted and we're frustrated. It's just going to get postponed. And I don't even know if it's going to happen. Now that the date is out, I think there's an end to that at least. So that you have 2 months at hand to do this. At this juncture, I feel like depending on where you're at your preparation level, firstly, if you think that you still haven't mastered your basics, you really need to work on that for the next 15 days at least. So how do you work? So I'll go and suggest, if for someone who hasn't mastered their basics and for someone who has already done their basics. So for someone who hasn't done their basics, the next 15 days should simply be focusing on your grammar rules, which I think you can go refer to Wren and Martin for, and probably just reading up articles online to increase your speed. And one thing I want to suggest is when you're doing your sample mocks, when you're doing your past year papers, anything. So there are 4 options that are given in a particular passage to recognize. So when you're supposedly asked the meaning of a word, and there are 4 options that are given, it's possible that you'll know the meaning of that word that is given, but it's also important to know all the meanings of all the other options that are given. So what I used to do is that every word that appears on the paper has to be noted down, and you need to look up for its synonyms and antonyms and know the meanings of all those words, because those are the words that are going to be frequently repeated.
Yeah.
Right. So that is one thing that you need to do in the next 15 days if you haven't worked on your basics. If you have worked on your basics, I suggest that this is not the time to do something new. You don't need to, pick up some new material to do something. What I'd suggest is go through the past year papers, all of them, including NLS, NALSAR. So we have past year papers from 1989 to 2007 for NLS, from 1999 to 2007 for NALSAR, and there are a few papers for NUGS as well, which if you find somewhere online, you can try doing them. But NLS and NALSAR is a must, and especially the English section. They're so what I noticed from this year's CLAT paper is that they have moved to the old pattern that we had for the individual exams. And that's why it's very important to solve those papers. So those are those papers that you need to do. You need to do the CLAT papers. You also need to do the ALIT papers. So I feel like, and a lot of you might have already attempted all of these questions. I still think that having done those papers once is not sufficient. I remember doing NLS and NALSAR papers, at least the English and legal sections, thrice. And I know that even in my third attempt, I didn't get all of those answers correct. So until you're getting those answers correct means you have some basic conceptual problem. And that's why you need to keep doing them over and over. So I think at this point in time, you just need to redo everything that you have done. You need to redo your mocks. You need to analyze them again, because mocks that you may have given in July last year, you may not remember at this point in time. It's been a year. That's just human nature. So you need to redo those mocks starting from July last year. You need to do the past year papers and of NLS, NALSAR, ALIT, and CLAT. I think that's all that you need to do in the next 2 months. I don't think you should pick up new material at this point in time.
Yeah, I think that's very, very, very good advice, because what happens is, because we are anxious, we end up hoarding a lot of material. And I think it's really important, like you said, you exhaust one particular source completely, so that you've mastered that completely, and then you sort of move on to the next. And I think what you're saying about doing past year's papers and the indication that we're sort of going back to the patterns, what it used to be before the CLAT happened, I think that's a correct observation. Now, I'm sure, Shivangi, you would agree with me, the CLAT, as much as it's about, getting the questions right, it's also about time management.
Yeah.
Because it's about how many questions can you do in that time frame. So if I want to ask you, what do you think is a suitable time limit that one should reserve for the English section, according to you?
Right. So given that I think we have 20, the limit of questions that have been specified by the paper this year is around 28 to 30, I think, for English section. So what I feel is that it should not take, at the max, should not take more than 30 to 35 minutes to solve the whole section. And that is because I feel like the questions have been reduced to 150. So I think you have 30 to 35 minutes is more than enough to solve the paper. 30 to 35 minutes, when we had 40 questions in the CLAT paper originally, was the limit was the time that we used to spend. Given that the questions have reduced, 30 to 35 minutes should be sufficient. Now, how do you approach on, capitalizing the maximum marks in the minimum time? So that is something that I also noticed from the sample paper. So they have specified before every passage that they give that this passage has 5 questions. This passage has 8 questions. This passage has 7 questions. So what I suggest is take the first 2-3 minutes of your paper to just skim through the English section and see if a passage is 2 pages long and it has only 2 questions to it. Do you think it's worth putting in 10 minutes solving those 2 questions? It is not. And it's probably, those 2 questions are probably going to be very prepositional or, article based questions. And you would not probably even require reading the passage for it. So what I suggest is that you first just skim through the paper, look at, so when we're going to be solving 2 RCs in this session, and when we're doing that, I'll tell you how those 2 RCs are very different from each other, and how one requires reading and the other does not require an extensive reading and spending that much time. Yeah. So I feel like this, and this comes from practice only, the analysis of, where to spend the right amount of time. So you can't spend 6 minutes reading a passage and then realize, oh, I didn't need to read this. And I just had to, read a line in the passage and attempt this question. So look at the heading, look at how many questions that need to be attempted in that particular passage. If it's 5 questions and it's a one 3 or 4 paragraph passage, you have to read it, and you have to read it thoroughly. And if it's a 1 page long passage and there are 8 questions that you need to answer, you attempt that first, because you know that if you read this one passage, you're going to get and attempt all those attempt all those answers, you're going to get straight off 8 marks. So you need to work on how you can get the maximum marks in the minimum time.
Yeah, I think that again is a very good hack to ace this exam. Now, so I want to ask you, when you see a reading comprehension passage, what is that checklist in your mind? Like, all of us, when we attempt a question, there are these certain keywords we are looking for, or, these are these certain elements that we're looking for. So what goes on in your mind when you see a RC passage?
Right. So I think people have like 2 ways of approaching an RC passage. One is like they first read the passage and then go to questions. The other is they read the questions first and then go to the passage. What I did is I read the questions, like I didn't read the whole questions, but I just skimmed through the questions first, then went on to read the passage and then attempted those questions. So what this does is that it gives you an idea of what you have to look for in the passage.
Yeah.
So for example, that the passage asks that these are the, what does the author mean by this line in the passage? So for that, I don't need to read the whole passage. So if there are only 3 questions that ask you, what is the author in the italicized line? So I just need to go back and read that thing. But if you would have started the other way around, you would have read the passage and then come to the questions. So that wastes a lot of time. I feel like you just need to skim through the questions first, go back to the passage, you'll know what you're looking for in that passage, and then attempt those questions.
Yeah, I think that again makes a lot of sense. So, the other thing that I wanted to ask you before we go on to solving those 2 questions is that what are all the sources that, apart from the previous year papers, what are all the sources that, students can look for, to do better in the English section? Where all can they start going and looking for RCs, apart from these past year papers?
Yeah, right. So I feel like for those of you who have the access to coaching material, I think that is one resource that you have. For those of you who don't, there are several resources available online for doing RCs. So apart from your past year papers, I feel like there are a lot of sample papers for GMAT that are available. But you can I'd suggest you look at it only after having done your past year papers, because they're of an advanced level and you shouldn't feel like, demotivated or discouraged doing those. The other places where you can, so there was this passage when we're doing the passage, there were these words that, dermatologists, neurologists, like we're all not expected to know all the meanings of all these scientific terms. So I feel like while these can be comprehended from the passage itself, there's this book called Word Power Made Easy by Norman Louis. Yeah. And that is one book I think I really enjoyed doing. And I feel like if you think you've already, had sufficient practice, that is something that you can pick up for another, 8 to 10 days and just finish it off. It's a very interesting exercise to do. It will take you like, say, 2 to 3 hours every day for the next 10 days. And you will enjoy, and you will also come out having learned a lot of, words, a lot of, how to contextually approach the RCs. So that is one area. There's also, for those of you who don't have coaching materials, there's also this book called Objective General English by S. Chand. And I think it's available online also in a PDF material. So if you don't have the hard copy, you can access that. If it's not available online, I can scan a few passages and send it to Kritika, and she can share it with all of you. So I think those, they're fairly simple, like the standard is not very advanced. And it also gives you an understanding of how to apply vocabulary, how to apply prepositions, and how to, go about a passage in a particular manner. So those are a few resources. Other than that, I think sample papers are sufficient.
Yeah, no, I think again, that makes sense. Sample papers, actually, if you do them, you actually exhaust a lot of stuff. And if you really want to go beyond, if you're somebody who's already done the sample papers, then I think, yeah, the GMAT paper is all, the GMAT sample papers are a great place for you to practice both English as well
And
as,
yeah,
critical reasoning as well, because all the topics overlap there. So definitely it helps you expose yourself to a higher level, which obviously will make you more comfortable in the exam, because the passages are not of that high level, neither is the reasoning. So, you did throw some light on coaching. So now, this is a question that a lot of students ask us actually. How important is it to enroll yourself in a coaching for CLAT exam? Is it like, non-negotiable?
Honestly, I've had friends who have done it all by themselves and have made it and are better placed than I was, and are better placed even in law school today without coaching, without having the access to coaching material. But I just feel like what it does is that it gives you a reality check of where you are in your preparation. And that comes from the mocks that you attempt and the percentile that you score in those mocks. Other than that, I feel like, sometimes you just need that kind of guidance to, like if you just, at some point in time in your preparation, you feel like giving up and you need that guidance. That is one support that is absolutely non-negotiable, and that is someone who only a teacher can give to you. Apart from that, I think it's perfectly doable to on your own as well. And people have done it. People are doing very well for themselves, without taking any coaching. But I just feel like what I emphasized is that it gives you a reality check of where you stand in the mock. So even if you are not enrolling yourself in a coaching, it's important to take a mock test series from any coaching, which is of a fairly low amount, and just to get an analysis of where you'll stand in the actual exam, because a lot of people are writing these mocks, and you'll know that okay, these are my competitors, and here's where I have to stand, and that's the level of competition that I'm going to face.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely bang on there, because when I was preparing for the CLAT as well as the IELTS, I think you may not want to take like coaching, but I think taking a test series is a great idea, because it helps you benchmark yourself with other test takers. And, you're right, it gives you a reality check. It also lets you know that, how much more you need to push yourself. So obviously, I think it just adds a lot more to your preparation. So, I have a lot of people in the chat box who are asking me this question. So I'm going to ask you, what do you think is like what is a good mark for you to get in the English section to know that you're going to do well in the CLAT? Though I know it's a very difficult thing to do. But if I were to ask you, then what would you say?
I think in out of marks, I can't really say, like, because like it depends on what kind of paper that they set, and it's going to vary every year. But if you're taking a test series, I think having a 92% plus percentile plus percentile is important to having if you're looking at the top 5 law schools.
Yeah.
So I think 92 percentile plus, and if it's like, say it's a 30 mark paper, I think above a 20 score should be a constant. That should be in practice. You shouldn't go below 20 ever.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. So I think now what we should do, Shivangi, is why don't we solve the questions that you have pulled out. So we have Shivangi's pulled out 2 reading comprehension passages for you that we'll be solving with you. So please note that yes, on the slide you will see the answer that is indicated. But what you guys must do is we'll give you first 2 minutes to go through the entire passage that will be displayed in the PPT. Then after that, we're going to display the question. Avoid looking at the answer. Try attempting it for yourself. That, we'll give you a minute for you to attempt it yourself. And then Shivangi will explain to you that what is the right answer and how did she arrive at it. Right? So I'm just going to start the PPT. In the meantime, Shivangi, another thing that I wanted to ask you, so, a lot of people are asking whether it's a good idea to read novels or not. What do you think at this point of time, and we are 2 months away?
I think it's never a bad idea to read books. Like it can never be a bad idea, whether it's just for your CLAT preparation or it's for your law school preparation. Reading is one of the most important things of your law school life, and there's just no two ways about it. You have to do it at some point in time. So honestly, like if you think you've done enough and you're at a fairly good stage in your preparation and you're bored and you just want to do something else, it's never a bad idea to read a novel. Please read as much as you can, whatever you can, whatever you want to.
Yeah, and before I move on to the PPT, another question I wanted to ask you. Usually, I have seen a lot of people tend to get very nervous when they're attempting the English section. And at times, because English is the first section, you see, that kind of breaks your morale when you're attempting the paper. So do you suggest that there should be a change in the sequence in the way you should be doing way you should be approaching the paper? And how to ensure that you're highly motivated while writing the paper? Because obviously this pattern is a new pattern. There will be a couple of spanners that will be thrown by the CLAT. As we all know, every time they change the pattern, there are these little surprises that are there for the students in the paper. So how do you keep yourself calm during that situation? And do you think it's a good idea to start with English first?
Right. So honestly, is it a good idea to start with English first? Depends and varies from person to person. It depends on if English is your strength, start with it. It'll give you a morale boost, and you will continue, and that spirit will flow into the paper. Again, if you think that it makes you overconfident, do not do it first, because you don't want your rest of the paper to be just inaccurate answers and just doing it because I just know it type. Other than that, I feel like if you think English is something that intimidates you, it is something that you're scared of attempting, do not do it first. Go to the GK section. I feel like GK section is one section that even like somebody who's with minimal prep will be able to answer a few questions at least, and that will give you a boost, and you can come back to the English section and then attempt the English section. Having said that, I feel like do not keep English for the last, because it's something that requires a lot of comprehension and requires a lot of focus. By the end of the paper, you may have lost track of your full 100% concentration. So, and you may not be able to devote all your strength to reading that properly, and then you don't want to end up getting wrong answers. So English is something that you should definitely not keep for the end, but whether you want to start with it or not is a personal choice, depending on whether it's a strength or a weakness for you.
Yeah, I think that makes complete sense. And with that, let's get into the presentation. There you go. So this is a passage, guys. Let's take about 2 minutes so that you guys can read it. Please let us know in the chat box section once you're done reading it so that we can move to the questions. Last minute to go, guys. Okay, so let's go to the questions now. That's your first question.
Yeah.
Over to you now, Shimang.
Yeah, so essentially, I picked up this passage, one, because I wanted to, and both the passage, I'll tell you when we go to the next passage why they're different. This particular passage requires the reading of the whole passage. And if you look at the questions, hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah. So when you go to the questions, you'll understand that they're asking you what the author means, what is the point that the author is trying to make in the passage. What is the tone of the passage? Things like these. What is the mood of the author in the passage? Questions like these require you to read the whole passage. So when you have questions like these, when you're skimming through the questions, understand from these hints that you need to read the whole passage and understand what the author is trying to say. So in this first particular question, they're saying by calling autoimmune disease a medical frontier, the author implies that. So they've given a very good rationale at the end, but I'll tell you how to go about it without reading the answer. So when you look at the options, you read the first one is autoimmune disease is the line separating sick people from ones who aren't. Can we, Kritika, can we go back to the last
Sure.
Yeah. So in the second paragraph, in the first line, the author talks about, in fact, autoimmune disease is as much of a medical frontier today, right? So when they're talking about it being a medical frontier, what you need to understand is, next slide.
No problem. Here you go.
What we need to understand is that it can never talk about the line separating sick people from ones who aren't, because it's talking about a medical frontier. It's not talking about a particular classification of people. So you eliminate the first option. In the second option, it says autoimmune disease lies at the extreme edge of understanding in the field of medicine. Now, for what does the frontier mean? So frontier implies that it stretches the limit of our understanding, and consequently, so this option looks relatively better than the first option. In the third option, it talks about autoimmune disease is the hottest area of study in the field of medicine. Now, the author has nowhere mentioned any such word, or has nowhere, even alluded to anything that would, call autoimmune diseases the hottest area of study. So you can't just, put words into the mouth of the author and say that, okay, C will be the option. There has been no mention of this. And even if, it's a correct fact, you cannot mark that as the answer if the author is not saying that. So a lot of times, if we look at the questions and not read the passage, after just reading the questions, we'll think, okay, fine, I just know the answer. It's a correct fact. That's not how it works. You have to understand what the author is trying to say, even if the other options make perfect logical sense and they're a well-established fact. So you have to look at what the author is saying. If he hasn't said it, you can't mark that as the answer. The last option is autoimmune disease is a lifestyle disease that is fashionable to have in the 21st century. Now, when you read the passage, you'll firstly understand that this is exactly opposite of what the author is trying to say. And he has nowhere mentioned that, it's a fashionable disease and it's a lifestyle disease that is fashionable. So again, this option is eliminated. So we're left with only the B option, and that is the right answer. That's how you should go about it. What I think is in RC especially, and especially in difficult questions where you can't make a choice, you have to do you have to follow the method of elimination, and you have to see why the other options don't fit in. And the one that you're left with is going to be the right answer.
Correct. This is the second question, 1.2.
Yeah. So in the second question, according to the passage, which of the following is the most likely to be supported by a proponent of the Bode immune system theory? So now when you read in the passage, there's a line that says Bode immune system theory, theorists say that autoimmune diseases rise because of, excessive hygienic factors. Can we, yeah. So where did it go? Yeah, so in the second paragraph, fourth line, it says, some researchers, devotees of Bode immune system theory, devotees and proponents is the same thing, and that's what they're asking in the question. Devotees of Bode immune system theory ascribe the rise to our newly hygienic world. With too little to do, our immune system turns on itself. Now, what they mean is that they're saying that the Bode immune system theory suggests that because there's been excessive hygiene, our body has, the response systems in our body, the immune systems in our body have failed, and it's a contradictory effect in itself. So this is what they're saying. So this is what you have to look for in the options in 1.2. Yeah, next slide. Yeah. So now here, look at option B. They're saying frequent and excessive washing of hands. Now this is completely contrary to what they're saying. They're saying that this is actually the cause of, they're saying that this is actually the cause of what they are. But the question reads, which of the following is most likely to be supported by a proponent? It's not asking you what they are suggesting. So you also have to read the question very carefully. Now, if you have understood what the board immune system theorists are saying, you will go ahead and mark these answers, B and C, or probably like either of B and C, and say that, okay, this is what they were saying. But the question asks you, what will they support? Now, what will they support will be a judicious use of soap and hand sanitizers, because they're saying that an excessive use is the cause of this failure of the immune system, and therefore we should support judicious use of soap and hand sanitizers. So you have to read the question also very carefully.
Right. So can I go to the next question?
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, so now this is one kind of a question that needs you to understand the whole passage. Now, which of the following summarizes the main point of the passage? When you're looking at these questions, or when you're looking at questions like, what is the author trying to suggest by his passage? What is the point that he's trying to bring across from, writing this passage? So what you have to look at is, it will never be an answer that is a single line in the whole passage. It is never going to be an answer that is the last line in the passage or the first line in the passage. It will always be an answer that is a recurring theme in the entire passage. And that is something that the author is going to be conveying. So here, even though the passage mentions that women are at a higher risk of being afflicted by autoimmune disease, do you think that's the main point of writing the passage? No, it's not. Because the author is only suggesting that women are at a higher risk of being affected by this autoimmune diseases. But we do not know. This is because we do not know, and we haven't well understood the medical, jurisprudence around this particular disease, and we haven't been able to identify and classify these diseases. So, while it has been mentioned in the passage, it's not the main point, or it's not the essence of the passage. So A can never be the answer. Then B says subdividing autoimmune diseases into specific categories will attract donations. The author says somewhere this, but again, this is not the main point of the passage. It's not a recurring theme, even in the first paragraph, second paragraph, third paragraph. So how you essentially identify such questions is, you go through each passage and see, okay, is this particular theme that is the main point of the passage, is it coming across in every passage of the author, or in most passages of the author? That's going to be a recurring theme, and that is going to be the right answer. Again, C, he has referred to the French writer Alphonse Daudet's account of living with syphilis, but that's only a comparison that he makes. It's not the main, and it's a comparison to put across his main point. It's not a comparison that is the main essence of the passage. So again, C can never be an option. The only option that we have left is D, and that is what he suggests right in the beginning, and it's a recurring theme in every passage. So although immune diseases is on the rise, it's not well understood by common people or the medical community, and that's going to be the right answer.
So, we have a question from one of our students that how can you understand the theme and summary of the passage?
Yeah.
So any tips on that?
Yeah, so like I said, that you have to be aware of these errors that you're going to make. Firstly, that, it's never going to be a single line in the middle. It's never going to be the last or the first line. So don't think like the passage starts by saying, this is what is the problem of today's world. It's not necessary that's going to be the main point of the author. You have to look at whether it's a recurring theme in the passage. So if you can go to the passage, I'll just explain how. Yeah. So in the first passage, he suggests, the author suggests that because researchers still don't agree on how to define an autoimmune disease, exact numbers are hard to come by. Then in the second passage, second paragraph, he suggests that some researchers say that the number of cases is rising at almost epidemic rates, and it's a leading cause of illness in young women. but we don't know the explanation to all of this. So again, he's mentioning the women, and he's mentioning that women are at a higher risk, but he's mentioning that to say that, again, we don't have an explanation to it. In the third paragraph, again, he says, my experience of feeling unwell, he, alludes to an experience. That's only to supplement the fact that, because we haven't been able to discover the actual cause of it, my experience has been such, right? So it has to be a recurring theme in every paragraph of the passage, or most paragraphs of the passage. It cannot be, a particular instance in the passage, or it cannot be a particular line from the passage. That's how you try to understand what the author is saying.
Okay, so now we'll go to question number 1.4. Yeah, there you go.
So this is what I was referring to for why you need to, do Norman Louis. So not specifically for this question, but WordPower Made Easy gives you, a lot of words that you'll just, find handy in papers, in all competitive exams for that matter. So like this question, which of the following options specifies the correct meanings of dermatologist, endocrinologist, immunologist, whatever, in that order. Now, one trick that you need to know is that it's okay even if you don't know the meanings of all those words, because the question says in that order. You have to look at whether so there will be specific options. So skin specialist is an option in A, B, and C. It's not an option in D, right? So D always gets eliminated, right? So D gets eliminated at the first stage because you know the meaning of dermatologist. That's a fairly simple meaning. So you know that it's going to be one of A, B, and C. Then you look at the next option, and then you look if whether any of this, so you know the meaning of neurologist. So wherever the fourth option fits the meaning of neurologist, then you look at that particular option and see whether the remaining options also fit. So it's mostly never going to be a very tough choice to make in the end with, one very difficult word where you can't decide. But it's going to be a logical, deduction of, okay, first one means this, third one means this, fifth one means this, even if I don't know what the second one means. But if the remaining three fit in that order, that's going to be the right answer.
Yeah. So we go to the next question. There you go.
Yeah. So this is one sentence that again comes back to the point that you might know what it means, enduring new reality, but you can't simply mark the answer based on what you know of this particular phrase. You have to see what the passage means contextually and what the author is trying to say with this enduring new reality. So in the passage, he talks about in the last paragraph, he says, yeah. So in the last paragraph, he says, where is it? I think, where is it? Right. In the last paragraph only, in the underlined sentence.
Yeah.
So he says, one of the hardest things about being chronically ill, is that most people find what you're going through incomprehensible. If they believe you are going through it, in your loneliness, your preoccupation with an enduring new reality, you want to be understood in a way that you can't be. Now, what does he mean by an enduring new reality? What other people don't understand, which means it's something that's been recently or newly, encountered. Yeah, and so in the first option, it does not mean the current scenario in which autoimmune disease is rapidly rising. It's not a scenario that it's firstly talking about, and it's not even talking about a current scenario. It's talking about a situation in which one is recently afflicted by chronic illness. So you don't even need to look at the other, words in that particular option. You just have to, even if you just look at the current scenario, a situation, a state of obsession, a state of loneliness, you will understand that it's not talking about a scenario or a state. It's talking about a situation. And that is the situation where one is recently afflicted by chronic illness. Recently comes from the enduring new reality. So it's fairly simple to, just comprehend, even if you don't know the exact meaning of all those words.
Awesome. So now we'll head to the second passage.
Yeah. So in this, I chose this second passage, which is very different from the first passage, because the first passage, while the author was trying to make a point, this is a fairly descriptive passage. And once you read it, I read it, but you may not have to read it in the exam, because, you know, they have asked questions that are just, you know, you just need to refer to a particular line in the passage and then go on to the passage. So it's a fairly descriptive passage. They're talking about, you know, mountains and their trip and all of that. And you don't need to, you know, read the whole passage, because you'll understand that there's no particular point that the author is trying to make. It's a descriptive passage. So when we look at the questions, you don't need to waste, you know, even those 2 minutes reading the whole passage. So we'll go on to the first question. Yeah. So it says, what does a kain mean? Now, you do not necessarily need to know what it means, but look at the options and go to the passage. In the first paragraph of the passage itself, they're talking about, after an hour's walk, we pass Lamune, the last camp on this route, and head up on Sangmuteng Lake. Along the way are several kains, one of which is topped by a rounded stone. Now it says one of which is topped by a rounded stone. A heap of sand is not, you can't classify as at one of which. A sand can't be one, you know, it can't be a singular. So it will never be a heap of sand. Will it be a stream of water again? No, it won't be. A bunch of eggs, why will it not be a bunch of eggs, even though it can be a one of which? Because it says that it is topped with another egg, I think, something like that. Can we, 1 second. Yeah. So it says rounded stone, the size and shape of an ostrich egg. So it's unlikely that it will again be a bunch of eggs which is topped with one of which is topped with an egg, right? Otherwise, they would have just classified the whole of them as eggs. So it's the only option that you have remaining is a mound of rough stones, which definitely can be topped by one of which can be topped by an ostrich's egg. So even if you do not know the meaning of the exact word, it's just follow the method of elimination and you'll arrive at the answer.
Super.
Yeah. Now, these are types of questions for which you need to know what each of these figure of speeches mean and what they imply. So you need to know what a synecdoche is. You need to know what a simile is. You need to know what an irony is. You need to know what a personification is. Otherwise, it's just, you can't answer any of these questions. And, there are tricks to understand, like we've been taught in school, that, a simile will be, when you equate two words, it will be with an as in between or with a like in between, right? So it's going to be a simile then. Personification is, I don't know how many of you have read that poem we do in, I think, class 10 in ICSE board. It's the Inchcape Rock. And it's one of the best poems to understand figures of speech because it has personification, it has irony, it has similes, it has metaphors. So, just like Google search it and you'll understand what it exactly means. So what is a personification? A personification is when an object is personified. You treat a particular object as a human. So that is personification. So for these kind of questions, you need to know figures of speech. Like similar questions to these will be where you need to know stuff is like proverbs. You need to know, phrases like prepositional phrases or idioms for that matter. So you'll find a list of all of these. I find a very good list of all of these on Clatterholic's website, and they're all free and accessible. You can refer to a lot of them, a lot of maxims and idioms and proverbs on their website. And it's a compiled list. So you can look at that. And it's also a lot of fun to do. So you can, whenever take a day off from, doing everything else that you're doing and just go through proverbs and maxims. And I think that will be sufficient to answer these type of questions.
We'll go to the next question. There you go.
Yeah. So this is choose the correct preposition in place of one from the following. Now, this is a purely grammar-based question, and you just have to refer to the sentence. See, for all of these questions that we came across, you didn't have to read any of the passage, right? You didn't have to read the passage at all to understand the meaning, to understand the figure of speech, or to understand what preposition will fit in that particular sentence. So here it says a number of birds keep us company. along this stretch of the trail. Just fit in all the other options. They will not fit. They will not even, according to your grammar rules, off, no, since the trail, no, by the trail, no. It's just going to be along the trail. So this is just like fairly direct application of grammar, and this will come by practice. For this, you can refer to Wren and Martin that has sufficient preposition and sentences that you can solve, and you'll get a hang of it. Yeah. In how many instances should the definite article the be used in the italicized sentence? Now, you don't have to refer through the whole passage. You just have to look at the italicized sentence. Yeah. So in the second paragraph, it says water of lake is a chalky blue in contrast to vivid indigo of Grandala that flits along its shore, right? So the water of the lake, that's fairly obvious. Which lake are we talking about? The author has referred before, the Sugmatang lake. So you know it's a particular lake, so it's going to be the lake. The water of the lake is a chalky blue in contrast to the vivid indigo. No, to vivid indigo of the Grandala floor. Sorry, the vivid indigo of the Grandala floor, because you're talking about a particular floor that flits along its shore. So you know it's going to be occurring 4 times, right? Along the shore. Yeah, 1 second. Its shore. The Grandala that fits along its shore. So you know you're talking about a particular Grandala that fits along its shore. So as soon as you're referring to, this is basic articles, again, refer to Wren and Martin for simple grammar rules, and you will understand where you have to use the, and, all the articles. And this is a basic question we've done, sufficiently in class 10, in class 12, in the English section. So it should not be a problem at all.
Yeah.
Other than, again, now this is a question on subject and object. How do you identify the subject and object in a particular sentence? So other than this solitary creature, now you need to know which solitary creature. They're asking you what is the solitary creature that the author is referring to. So you have to read 2 lines before this paragraph where they're saying solitary creature, and you'll understand that the solitary creature that they have referred to, other robin accenter. So they say, he talks about the Grandalas have dropped behind and we now follow a robin accenter slightly larger than a sparrow. The bird is unafraid of us and comes within inches of our fingers as we offer it biscuit crumbs. Other than this solitary creature, now you have to, it's a basic application of your subject and object. Now, what is the subject of this solitary creature? It's the robin accenter.
So I think this brings us to the end of this presentation and solving questions.
Yeah.
So now we just stop the slide presentation and let's go back to the questions. So we have a lot of questions on that. How can we brush up our basics? Sometimes we get stuck in some really petty questions that consume more time than they normally should. So I think this is a problem of time management. When should you know that this is it? I should stop solving this question and move to the next.
Right. That, and I think how you need to brush up your basics, I just said, see, honestly, this particular English section of this was a full mark scoring section. Like you could have gotten 100% score in this section just by, giving it, the calm space of your mind when you're attempting the paper and just looking carefully at what the question is asking you. Don't get overconfident if they're, very simple questions. You need to read the question after the passages, what they're particularly asking. Like we understood in one particular question where they're saying what would they agree with and not what they're implying in that particular passage. So I think just, this was a perfectly, 100 on 100 score, English section. And other than that, your basics, like I told you, for prepositions for, articles, subject, object, verb agreement, all of these, you need to refer to Wren and Martin. And, there's sufficient time, 2 months, to do it. Even if you do 3 exercises every day, which is probably 10 sentences in it, 30 sentences, which should take you not more than 15 minutes, it's enough. You'll get a hang of, words like dispose, use, of. So, when you look at this particular sentence, with dispose, you're going to be using an of. with a single F, not a double F.
Yeah.
Yeah, so all of these things.
So, we have another one question, and this will bring me to the end of our session, that how can you differ between a judgment and inference as a question?
Right. So a judgment and an inference as a question. So these were questions that we used to get in our critical reasoning section as well. And a judgment will particularly have, subjective words, like, adjectives, like, it's a good thing. I think it is a good day today, or it's a, beautiful day today. So it's a judgment. It's not an inference, but something that you're drawing from the particular facts in a passage is going to be an inference. So it's mostly likely going to be neutral. It's not going to be, any comment or compliment, or be using an adjective. So that is one thing that you can look at, and it should directly, correlate from, like, so if you say she is a girl and her name, she's a girl and she goes to school, right? So now you can go, she's a girl going to school. So that's a particular inference. I have not passed a judgment, that she's a good girl going to school. Nowhere did I say that, she's a good girl. It's directly from the facts. I'm inferring from the facts.
Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense. So I think this brings us to the end of our session. Thank you so much, Shivangi, for taking out time. I think this has been a highly engaging session, and I think you've shared some very valuable tips and tricks as to how to hack the English section. I wish, man, when we were preparing, we had someone like you who was sharing these tips and tricks with us so literally. I see there are a lot of people that have sent us private messages that, how can we access these sessions? Guys, you need to follow our YouTube channel called View TV by Vijay Bhumi. We have a separate playlist altogether called the #CLAT Masterclass series, where we have videos uploaded for each of these sections. So within the next 3 days, you will see a clipping of this video, which will also be available in that particular playlist. So make sure that you're subscribing to our YouTube channel so that you get access to all of this information. Also, I must tell you, on Sunday, we are hosting a session where we're going to be talking about how to crack the LSAT exam, since the LSAT exam is also 2 weeks from now. So we have the All India Rank 1 of last year who's going to be joining us on this session and sharing his tips and tricks as to how to crack the LSAT. Thank you very much, Shivangi. I think this has been helpful, and this has been a great session. So, and I think you definitely, our audience would have benefited highly from all those valuable inputs that you have shared. I hope you had as much fun doing this.
I had a lot of fun. Thank you so much for inviting me. And all the best to everyone. Please don't get frustrated. You have 2 months. Just give it your best shot. Trust me, it's worth it.
Thank you so much. And before I sign off, I see there are people asking us repeatedly about vocabulary. Guys, vocabulary, the book to go to is Norman Louis. I wrote the CLAT in 2011. Shivangi wrote it later, I think, but both of us will tell you for vocabulary, that's the go-to book, right? Yeah. So with this, I'm going to sign off from this episode of View TV by Vijay Bhumi. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. Please do subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you keep updated. Follow our social media handles so that you know what interesting sessions we have that are upcoming. Next week, the same time, we are going to be joined by Mr. Asad, who is an alumnus of Nalsar, Hyderabad, who will be talking about how to tackle the GK section. So make sure you join us again on next Tuesday at 6:30 as we discover how to tackle GK. Thank you so much again, Shivangi. See you, everybody. Keep safe. Bye-bye. Best of luck.